Ah yes, the things we do for love. I have a very close friend who I have nicknamed Pocahontas, and she has for long wanted me to paint a miniature for her. So I got this model offer from Temu. I believe it was just called Woman with Cat or something like that, so Pocahontas is not its official name. However, there are plenty of techniques in this video that you can apply to your own miniatures, be it Warhammer or whatever. So without further ado, let's get started and happy painting. Okay, here we go. There are two things I would like to dry brush on this miniature, and that is the stone she's sitting on and the fur over her chest and on her hands and feet. So I'm starting with the stone, and what I'm going for is a contrast paint, Basiliacum Grey. Just paint it all over the stone. I'm not thinning this down at all, I'm just taking it straight from the pot. Just be careful not to overload your brush. And then give it plenty of time to dry. The contrast paint is fully dried. Next we're going to add a highlight. I'm using Longbeard Grey for this. So grab your dry brush and get some paint on it. And then wipe most of it off on a tissue. Like so. And then just flicker it all over the stone to create some nice highlights. Just take your time with this and do it all over. You can always test the strength on your hand. Following that, it's time to add some golden details. And for that I'm using a base coat of Retributor Armor. And always thin your paints with water. I'm using a detail brush for this. Just be careful not to hit the stone when you paint in the golden details. Such as right here, for example. And also on the front. And those arch forms. When the gold has been applied, it's time to add a shade to darken it down a bit and add some definition. I'm using Raglan Flesh Shade, and I'm still using a small brush for this. And when you're done, remember to give it plenty of time to dry. The shade is now completely dry. Next I've added some Liberator Gold to my palette because now I want to do a layer. So once more I'm going all over the gold, but I'm avoiding the recesses. This will make it shine really well. So just do the same as when you base coated it and go all over the gold, except the recesses. And for the final step on this stone, I'm going to add some Stormhold silver as a fine highlight to the gold. When you can use the side of your brush, it's much easier to control it that way. Just be careful and go all over the gold. And with that, the stone is complete. Before we move on to the next step, however, I would like to make a little cleanup with some wraith bone, so we are ready to paint all the areas of the model. This is not very exciting, but it should be done. And of course, be careful not to hit the stone we just painted. Next up is the fur, which is the next thing we're going to dry brush. But first I'm going to add a contrast paint, Volupus Pink, all over the fur. And I'm referring to the one on her chest, her hands and her feet. When the contrast paint is fully dried, we can add our first of two dry brush, and the first one I'm using is Emperor's Children. So get some on your brush and do the same as when we dry brush the stone. Like so. And then just flicker it all over the fur. Just be very careful not to hit the stone. And with that we can add another dry brush slash highlight. And I'm using Fulgrim Pink. I'm being a bit softer this time around. Only trying to hit the most raised areas. Just be gentle and take your time with this. And then the fur is complete. Now it's time to do another cleaning session. So grab your wraith bone and paint all the places you've hit with the dry brush. And then we can move on to the next step. Next up is the skin, which is usually the first part I always paint on a miniature, but I just wanted to get all the dry brushing out of the way first. Now I wanted to look a bit exotic, so I'm going for a dark skin tone, and I'm starting with a base coat of Blood Reaver flesh. I've added some thinned down Blood Reaver flesh to my palette. All the skin she's showing is her head, her chest and her hands. There's not much of it, so just be careful and block it all in. The base coat is dry, so now we need some shading and definition. And for that I'm using Raglan Flesh Shade. Just apply this all over and give it about, I'd say, 20 minutes to dry. Alright, I hope you didn't put your Blood Reaver flesh too far away, because we're going to need it once more. This time to add as a layer. I thinned it down with water, and I'm using a small brush for this. So go all over the skin once more, but avoid all the recesses. Following that, I would like to add my first highlight, and I'm using Night Quester Flesh. I thinned it out plenty with water. So pick out the most raised areas, such as her nose, for example. Her chin, her lips, and other areas. Following that, I would like to add a final highlight of Cadian flesh tone. I thinned this down plenty with water. And this is for the most extreme raised areas. I'll pick out her nose once again, for example. Just like so. And then just go around the skin and, for example, pick out her knuckles and her chin and her lips and her chest. Yeah, an extreme highlight. Next up is the fun part, and that's the suit she's wearing. I'm going to use a contrast paint, Achillean green, mixed with contrast medium in a 2:1 ratio. We're going to do a little bit of blending, so it might be a little advanced, but I'll show you just how to do it. It's quite easy when you first get the hang of it. But first I'm taking, let's say, a single drop of Achillean green onto my palette. Clean my brush. And then add some contrast medium. Close to it, but not into it. Like so. And then I'm going to mix them together at the center. And you might notice I'm not bringing all of the contrast paint in, because I want this sort of strength. Yeah, about this. It's quite important that it's thin. So always, if you're in doubt, use more contrast rather than more contrast medium rather than contrast paint, sorry. And with that, the first step is to just apply it all over her suit. And let it dry fully before we head on to the next stage. The contrast paint is dry, and I must admit I'm a fan of this color. Now I'm using the exact same mix as before. But this time I'm only going from the top and about halfway down to her waist. Like so. And then quickly wash your brush, make sure it's still damp, and then rough out the edges so it blends naturally onto the lighter color, so we don't get any hard edges. So I'm going to do that all over the top half of the model. And when it's dry, we're going to do this a third time. And as I said, we're going to do this a third time using the exact same mix. Now the trick is you can do this as many times as you want, and each layer will make it a bit darker. So it's up to your preference really, how dark you want this, but I'm at least going for these 3 coats. But I'll be back and tell you how many coats I've added in total. Quickly wash your brush, make sure it's damp, and blend it in. Okay, I'm done. I ended up with no less than 6 coats of the contrast paint on the top half. Now there is plenty of choices out there when it comes to contrast paints, and you can use whatever color you want and use the same concept. For example, I've painted this Gossamet Archer for Warhammer Age of Sigmar and used the same principle on his wings. There's a video on my channel for this miniature. So, you can make it as dark or as light as you want, it depends on the amount of layers you give it. But let's move on to the next step. Next up is the hair of the model, and I would like to give her a purple strand of hair. So I'm using Magos Purple for this, and a small brush. And then just pick out her hair. And let it dry completely before moving on to the next step. And following that, I'm adding a highlight of Genestealer Purple. I thinned down some of it on my palette. And when applying a highlight, use the side of your brush for maximum control. With that highlight complete, we can paint the rest of the hair. I'm using Black Legion mixed roughly 1:1 with the contrast medium. Just apply it all over and let it dry fully. And if you think it's looking too bright, you can always add a second or even a third layer. Which is why I have thinned it with contrast medium. Okay, I ended up giving it 4 coats, so I presume you could just add it straight from the pot to get similar result. But it all depends on how strong you want the color to be. Now if you want to take this a step further, you could add a dry brush with maybe Asian Grey or Stormworm in Fur, but I'm going to leave it right here and move on to the next step. And the next step is her shoes. I'm starting with an all-over coat of Wildwood. Just be very careful around the other details. Following that, I'm adding a layer of Gawthor Brown. Once again, be careful not to hit the surrounding details. And finally, I'll add a highlight of Baneblade Brown. Next up is a sweet little cat, and it's wearing a bracelet, so I'm going to start with that. And I'm coating it in with the Black Templar. And for the cat itself, I'm going to block it all in with Celestra Grey. Next up, let's add some shading and definition, and I'm using Agrax Earthshade for this. And let it dry fully before heading on to the next step. I've made sure the shade is completely dry. Next I'm going to add a layer of Ulthorn Grey. Just paint it all over and avoid all the recesses and crevices. And finally I'll add a highlight of white scar, such as on the ears and tip of the tail and whatever you think should have a highlight. The final part I'm going to paint of this miniature are her eyes, and I'm starting with a base coat of Corax White to block out her eyes, as careful as I can. Following that, I'm adding a tiny dot of Abaddon Black in the center of her eyes. And finally I would like to give her a little makeup. I'm using this purple glaze produced by Two Thin Coats. I've added some to my palette, and even though this is very thin, I've still added a little bit of water to it. So what I'm going to do is just paint this above her eyes. And after that, she's done. And here she is, all complete. I mentioned in the beginning of this video that this was a gift for a friend whom I have nicknamed Pocahontas. She has a nickname for me as well, which is Pink Flamingo. Yeah, don't ask, it's a long story. So I decided to put the miniature on a display plinth and added the pink flamingo to the background to forever remind her who painted this for her. Here is a picture of the final gift. I really hope she will like it, and also hope you did as well. If so, please leave a like and subscribe to my channel, it really helps. Thank you for watching and happy painting!
We'll be right back.